Okay, before we get into this video, I gotta tell you kind of a funny story. I've been in business now for 17 years, and I've been doing these videos on YouTube now for coming up on 10 years. In fact, next month it'll be 10 years that I released my first video, which is pretty amazing. And during that time, you learn a thing or two, but you're still capable of making rookie mistakes. Let me just tell you really quickly, these days I am extraordinarily busy. I am running a full-time real estate photography company as well as a people photography company, and the time that I have to make these videos is very, very limited. And I made a classic rookie mistake. I was filming this video, I had 2 hours, I'm like, you know what, let's bang through this, we can get to the different sections out. I'm like, yeah, I got it. I did an audio check on the first video, or the first clip that I did, everything was perfect. And silly me, I recorded all that stuff, spent all that time in the studio, got it all done, got home, and right as I was editing the footage, midway through about the halfway point of the review, this happened. So the lesson here is check your batteries before you start filming, and check your batteries periodically as you're filming, especially on microphones, so that you don't forget to miss out on audio, which is exactly what I did. And here it is on a Sunday, and I am re-recording half of this video, hence why the change of outfit, why I haven't showered. It's, again, a testament to how little time I have these days to make these videos. But that said, let's go on with the Voigtlander 10mm, and remember, learn from your mistakes. I don't care how long you've been in this business, everybody makes them. We're all human and stuff happens. So anyway, on to the review. Hey guys, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, and I'm based here in beautiful, sunny Southwest Florida. And you know, I've been running this YouTube channel for going on almost 10 years now. I'm almost done with my 9th year, heading into my 10th year running this YouTube channel. And during that entire time, I don't think I've ever reviewed a single lens on a Leica camera. And this right here is the Leica M10P Safari. It's a really cool camera. I bought it for personal projects and personal use. I really don't use it professionally. A lot of landscapes and just kind of some cool artsy photography that I've been meaning to do for a while. And one of the very first lenses that I bought was the Voigtlander 10mm f5.6. 10mm on a full frame camera. That is a massive field of view. It's also that much more impressive when you consider it's a rectilinear lens, which means it's not a fisheye. It actually claims to render lines relatively straight. But a 10mm on a full frame camera, and something this compact and this small, is it any good? Well, we're going to use this review to find out. First up is the build quality. And the first thing that strikes you about the Voigtlander 10 is how small it is, especially when compared to other ultra-wide-angle lenses in this category. For example, this is the brand new Sony 16-35 f4PZ, and look at how much bigger this is compared to the Voigtlander. I mean, the Voigtlander's size is pretty impressive. Now, that may partly be because it's only a max of f5.6, where the majority of other ultra-wide-angle lenses in this category typically have at least an f4, maybe an f2.8, and sometimes even an f1.8 in the case of the Sigma 14mm Art. The Voigtlander is downright puny by comparison. Coming in at just 11 ounces for something this wide is truly amazing. The lens is made out of metal, and the lens mount is made out of metal as well. The focus ring and aperture ring are both dampened and move with a nice quality level of resistance. The aperture clicks securely into place. On the inside, there are 13 elements arranged in 10 groups, and the aperture ranges from f5.6 to f22. And there are 10 rounded aperture blades, which makes for some pretty cool sun and light stars. There's no filter thread, meaning that traditional screw-on filters need not apply. That's probably because of the bulbous nature of this front element. Now, on the downside, Voigtlander makes no reference or claim to any kind of weather sealing or weather resistance, which I think is a bit of a shame considering how relatively high of a price point this lens is. Yes, it's 10mm, but it's also only 5.6. At this price point, I would have assumed some semblance of weather sealing. But that's about the only real downside in the build quality. Otherwise, it's a fairly strong effort from the folks over at Voigtlander, and as such, the 10mm gets a 9 out of 10 for build quality. Next up is where we would normally cover autofocus speed and accuracy, but given that this is a manual focus only lens, we don't really need to get into that part of the review like we usually do. I will, however, touch on the manual focus of the lens. Given the extremely wide depth of field, so long as you set the focus to at or close to infinity, the overwhelming majority of the scene is going to be rendered in sharp focus. So in that sense, it's kind of easy to obtain sharp focus if your goal is to get everything in focus. One other thing to keep in mind on a rangefinder camera like the Leica M10 that I'm using here is the viewfinder or the rangefinder does in no way represent the true field of view that you'd be looking at with a lens like this in obtaining focus. The rangefinder design only gives you frame lines, I believe, as wide as 21mm. After that, the rangefinder is pretty much worthless for composition, etc. So if you're going to go this wide on a Leica, then I highly recommend the Visiflex Type 20 electronic viewfinder, which will show the true rendering of the scene electronically through the viewfinder or through the electronic viewfinder. Using the EVF, I get a much better sense of what I'm actually looking at than I would ever get with the rangefinder because, again, the rangefinder simply doesn't get wide enough with a lens like this. Unfortunately, this additional EVF isn't cheap. They run somewhere in the neighborhood of $500. And the Leicas are already expensive in the first place. Another option is you could buy an optical viewfinder adapter, but to me that's a bridge too far. In the end, autofocus speed and accuracy on the Voigtlander 10mm simply do not apply. Next up is optical quality and the quality of the results. When you have a wide-angle lens like this, the general assumption is going to be that you're probably going to get pretty good image quality in the frame center, and then image quality will slowly degrade as we move further and further away from the center of the frame, and by the time we get to the extreme edges, one would expect image quality to deteriorate rapidly. Though I have to say at f8, which is where I shoot the bulk of my real estate photography and or landscape photography, I am by and large very pleased with the overall image quality that I'm getting out of the Voigtlander 10mm f5.6. The center of the frame is in fact tack sharp. The edges aren't too bad either, but the extreme corners do suffer just a little bit in the image quality department, but I don't think they're that bad. Vignetting is very strong wide open at f5.6, but this is hardly surprising given the extreme wide-angle nature of the lens. One of the really neat upsides to the Voigtlander 10mm is its 10-bladed aperture. Not for bokeh, but rather what's so nice about it is the sun stars and light stars that I get in my images. To my eye, this adds to the overall pleasingness of the image. Is pleasingness even a word? However, rather than me going on and on about the image quality, it's probably better if I just show you. The next minute or so will be a series of still images taken with the Voigtlander 10mm f5.6 and a Leica M10 camera. And in spite of having pretty vignetting wide open and not having the best image quality in the extreme corners, I have to say again that I'm very pleased with the overall results that I'm getting from the Voigtlander 10mm f5.6. Last up is value. And at $1,100 on a Leica M, mind you, the lens is under $1,000 on virtually every other camera system, But I think for what it is and what it can bring to your images, I think the 10mm is a decent value. Yes, there are wider aperture, wide-angle lenses out there that also have autofocus on other camera systems that frankly would do just as good of a job, but obviously don't cover the same field of view at 10mm. As of this video, I'm only aware of one other lens that's wider, that's also rectilinear on full-frame cameras, and that's the Leica 9mm f5.6. That lens is also manual focus, but it's curiously $300 less than the Voigtlander 10mm on the Leica M system. That said, the Voigtlander does have one really neat party trick, and that is its 10-bladed aperture for those aforementioned stellar sun and light stars that you can get in your images. 10mm on a full-frame camera is still an extraordinarily wide field of view, and in this case on a Leica M mount rangefinder, because until recently rectilinear lenses this wide on a Leica M mount were essentially unheard of. So the Voigtlander and the Leica are very unique in this respect. Given that there are competitors out there that are wider and cheaper, I still have to say that I think the Voigtlander 10 is a good value, just not a great one. And therefore, for value, the Voigtlander gets an 8 out of 10. To wrap up this review, we gave the Voigtlander 10mm f5.6 a 35.5 out of 40 and our recommended rating, just missing the highly recommended rating by a half a point. The final word. If you are in the market for an ultra wide angle lens and you own a Leica M mount camera, then I think the Voigtlander 10mm f5.6 is certainly a viable option in the ultra wide angle category. Just keep in mind that on a Leica, Voigtlander charges $100 more than what they would charge for mounting this lens onto virtually any other camera system. And in order to be able to preview the full field of view, you're going to need to utilize the rear screen or buy the VisiFlex EVF, which I have mounted here. There are certainly cheaper options out there, but one of the things that I like about utilizing a Leica M is that I have to slow down and I have to think about everything that I do. And it's one of those photographic tools that that actually leaves literally everything up to the photographer. If you own a Leica, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's kind of like photographing digitally utilizing an analog camera. The Voigtlander 10mm is a pretty unique experience on a Leica, and equally as important, the results you can get with this lens will certainly give you some very unique and ultra-wide perspectives with very, very good optics in the process. I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, and I'm based here in beautiful, sunny Southwest Florida. If you like videos like this, go ahead and give me a like, or better yet, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, happy shooting.